Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on expressing community value in creative spaces, featuring Clark Burnett from the City of Niagara Falls Museums. This webinar is only half an hour today, so after which we will have a short Q&A period, and we will wrap things up around 12:40 p.m. At this time, let's just skip to our agenda. At this time, if you are not signed up for the closing webinar for our Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, we ask that you kindly log out of the Adobe Connect meeting room, and you can do this by simply exiting the screen at the X at the top right. For those who are registered AFMM participants who are joining us for the closing webinar, we ask that you stay logged in the meeting room, and you will also dial into our conference line for audio and a discussion around the closing of the program. Our conference line number and access code will be provided on the screen, and we will prompt you when it is time to dial in. If anyone has any questions at any time, please type them in the chat box at the bottom right of the screen. Just a few reminders before we get started this afternoon. We will be offering closed captioning throughout the webinar today. The closed captioning will be happening at the bottom of the screen where participants can change the font type, size, and color of the text. What I'd like to do now is ask participants who are joining us to use the chat box and let us know that you can see the caption pod at the bottom of the screen. So if you can see it, just type a quick yes so we know that it is active. Great, Jess, thank you for confirming. Got it. Thanks, everyone. Just wanted to let you know as well, a record of the closed captioning will be sent to participants following the webinar, and it will be made available on our website. We will also be recording this session, and we will be emailing out a quick survey following the webinar along with the recording, so you can access these later. We ask that you complete the survey so we can continue to improve our learning series for arts facilities across Ontario and Canada. Lastly, you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Your microphones have been disabled for this webinar, but you can use your speakers or headphones to listen in, and you can adjust the sound by clicking on the speaker icon at the top of the meeting. As well, we will have roughly 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the webinar to answer any questions that you might have for Clark or Work and Culture or ArtsBuild Ontario. Please use the chat box in the bottom right to type in your questions, and we will get to as many as possible in the limited time we do have today. So, just to get to introductions, my name is Alex Glass, and I'm the Program Manager at ArtsBuild Ontario. In case you have not heard of ArtsBuild, we are a nonprofit arts service organization that provides tools, resources, and learning opportunities that help make Ontario's arts facilities more sustainable. The Learning Series is part of a bigger program that supports our key programs at ArtsBuild Ontario, which includes Space Finder, it includes the Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, Asset Planner for the Arts, and Energy Conservation. So we're happy to offer this topic under the umbrella of our Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, but also to the Water Network of organizations across the province and Canada too. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm just going to hand things over now to Steph Draker to introduce Work and Culture.
Hi everyone, hopefully you can all hear me. Alex, am I coming through? Okay, perfect. So my name is Stephanie Draker and I am the Program Manager with Work and Culture. Many folks who are familiar with Work and Culture know us for our job board, but we are so much more than just the job board. Our mission is to support the people who work in the cultural sector through lifelong career development and entrepreneurial and business skills training. So generally we characterize what we do with our core branded activities as more foundational and kind of basic overviews of the topics that help artists and organizations thrive in their careers. But very often we get to partner with great organizations like ArtsBuild to dive into some specific learning objectives to a particular community. It's been great working with ArtsBuild, and we look forward to working with them in the future as well.
Thanks, Steph. That was great. I just got some feedback from the chat box that I guess you're coming in a little bit quieter than I can hear you. So perhaps maybe increase the volume on your microphone for the next time we do our webinar for AFMN. But yeah, I'm going to move on and introduce Clark for us and just thank you. And we love working with Work and Culture on all of our programs. We've done the mentoring network in the past. We're currently in our 4th iteration of it. And we also partnered with them on the learning series. So they're a fantastic partner for ABO, and we love working with them. Clark will be presenting on the topic of creative space or expressing community value in creative spaces. Clark has a history degree from Brock University, and while working one summer at the St. Catharines Museums, he developed an appreciation for the challenges facing museums in Ontario. He continued his studies at the University of Leicester, completing an MA in Museum Studies, which included a placement at Belgrave Hall and participation in a Museums Association initiative to improve cultural diversity in museums. Clark has worked at Battlefield House Museum, Bacchus Heritage Village, and the Niagara Historical Society and Museum, and chaired Doors Open Niagara, the Museums of Niagara Association, and is the current president of the Ontario Museums Association. He has been with the Niagara Falls Museum since September 2010, where he has overseen operations of the city's 3 museums and the $12 million expansion of the Niagara Falls History Museum. In 2015, he was named Culture and Museums Manager for the City of Niagara Falls, and he has authored and edited several books on local history. He lives in St. Catharines with his wife and 2 children. So there's the introduction on Clark. Now over to you, Clark, to tell us a little more about expressing community value with creative space.
Thanks, Alex. And I forgot how long that introduction is. Sorry, I should have sent you a short one, and I should have probably updated it too. I'm the past president of the OMA, but that's just recent. But thank you, Alex and Stephanie, for asking me to do this, and for all those out there taking the time in your day to join us in on this. And I hope I make it as interesting and informative as you want it to be. And again, as Alex mentioned, I am the Culture Museums Manager here in the city of Niagara Falls. And sort of in my current position, I sometimes joke that I'm attempting to bring culture to Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is an interesting place, and we do have culture here, and it's just been underrepresented and a little overshadowed by the hotels and casinos and the mega projects that we have in the city. But I hope that I can sort of provide some context as to what we're trying to do here and how we're trying to sort of wedge our way into the landscape around here in Niagara Falls. So I'm going to cover a lot of territory in the next 20 minutes or so on this topic and go in many different directions. I plan on doing a bit of an overview and offering some directions. And as usual with these things, I'll probably leave you with more questions than answers. I am aware of the people on the site that each of you have, different challenges, different audiences, and different mandates and different perspectives. Hopefully I can give you something to take away that is interesting and valuable. I'm going to try and discuss the 2 different types of audiences that ArtsBuild sort of and Work and Culture told me might be in on this program. Those with spaces that they want to use more and utilize more, and quite frankly, maybe generate more revenue or different opportunities within their community. And also those who want to look at this in the bigger context and what community value means to you. My intention was to raise some questions for your organization, hoping to get you thinking about a few things and hopefully provide some tips along the way. Now, a bit of a warning, you may have already picked up on it. I always talk really fast during presentations and in general when I get excited about a topic. Usually is to avoid people questioning my lack of knowledge on a subject matter. Hopefully I know enough on this matter. We've been looking at this in many different ways that's not the case this time, but I do apologize if I speak too quickly, and I'll do my best to speak clearly and take some time on this topic. I'm also way more interested when talking off the cuff and less so when reading from a script, but I fear that I'd be here way too long, going way too many tangents, and really not provide value, and probably the 25 minutes that they've allocated me would take 2 hours. So I'm going to read this, read most of my presentation and trying to have the slides stay on track, and I hope I don't bore you in the process. Let's see if I can get this moving. Yeah, hang on. All right, where's the advance? Okay, Alex, it's not moving for me. There we go. Is that me? Alex, did I move that or did you?
It was me. What I'll do, Clark, is try and resolve things on my end for you, and then you can just keep going, and then you just stop.
Okay, great. So what is community value? When we first started discussing this topic, decided to put in a few tips and examples to provide some value to me. My first tip would be for you to determine what you think is community value. Some of the ways you can approach this is by finding gaps in the community and determining how to fill them. That could be a room for you, a theater, outdoor space, or even the people you have around, your volunteers or staff. You should get a clear handle on what is important to your community. You may have ideas, but you should do a few things to see what materials exist. Your city council that you have should have a publicly available set of strategic priorities. I would recommend getting to know them. Our municipality here in Niagara Falls and in the region usually puts this out about 3 months following an election. It might give you a good sense of the political landscape and what politicians and city decision makers are looking to do to improve the community. Also, you should meet with service groups, government, and other people. But more importantly, get to know what your community needs are from the people who are trying to meet them. Trying to determine how you can potentially match some of their needs. And, nothing new, network. Get outside of your regular networks. Quite often we get too focused in on the people we regularly meet and have a good relationship with. Try and set up meetings, go to events, connect with people outside of your network that you feel can help improve the direction that you're going. Following that, you should determine what your guiding principles are. What is your organization's role and how they might match up, and determine next steps in the creation of a relationship with some of these other organizations. My role at the City of Niagara Falls is twofold. Yes, we operate a museum the same as many museums across the province. However, we take in some different considerations when determining our pursuits. I have been very fortunate here. Our community has been very much under-supported in the past, and I've been given a lot of leeway when developing partnerships and programs. I recognize I'm very fortunate. I used to run a not-for-profit two-staff museum, and I do know how fortunate I am to work for the City of Niagara Falls. However, when developing programs here, strategic plans and other endeavors, a few of our considerations include the taxpayers, which a large amount of our funding comes from taxes, and we need to ensure that our programs are accessible and fill gaps in community opportunities. We're also always looking to provide a venue for diverse opinions and voices, and we try to do our best to sort of provide that opportunity for them. And we do have some flexibility here with budgetary issues and with our mandate, which is pretty broad. When we opened our new museum, well, it's not so new now. We actually opened up in 2012, but we still call it the new place. Our CAO wanted us to open up our new facility to as many cultural groups and organizations, to be close to the equivalent of a cultural community center. We aren't the perfect venue for that, really not what we endeavored the expansion to do, but we do what we can. I am aware that it isn't always feasible for others who are in this webinar to consider, but being in a rec and culture department, our approach is to allow outside users to utilize our space below market value. For us, and my mantra is that hockey rinks and ball diamonds already do that, so why shouldn't we also have that same opportunity to take advantage of and provide that opportunity for the community. Also in Niagara Falls, we are trying to create welcoming, friendly, and most importantly, interesting public spaces, which we sorely lack in our community. Along these same lines, for us in the museum field, we have started moving in this direction already, both municipally run and independent not-for-profit museums. We have all had to examine how we as museum professionals, how we remain relevant and important to the community. But more importantly, we're looking for new ways to interpret and understand our past, present, and future. Some museums have struggled with moving away from the concept of having artifacts on display to let people look at in awe. However, many of us did try to ensure that the original idea that museums were a place to learn about the world. We wish to ensure that our facilities are a place to discuss what the tangible and intangible stories mean to us today. We have tried to keep that mandate as part of our reasoning behind programming and facility use. By evolving this way, we have seen that we've become more inclusionary and engaged with the community with which we serve. Niagara Falls is taking a similar approach with a new facility here. We are about midway into the development of a cultural hub and farmers market hybrid, or mashup, because nobody's ever sort of done it before. We're just throwing those two together and hope they stick. What we're trying to do is make some take some of them successes in the museum and look at how we can create a welcoming, dynamic space that will focus in on authenticity and creativity. All right. Oh, I'm trying again. I still can't do it, Alex. Click. And I do. I reached out to some colleagues with different experiences and roles, and I asked them what their thoughts. Oh, hang on. Oh, sorry. Click again. Sorry, with me not controlling it. Go again. Right. I reached out to some colleagues with different experiences and different roles. I asked them about their thoughts about community value and how they approach this concept. Steve Stolze at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre in St. Catharines told me that the entity about expressing community value is that the entity or venue means so much to the fabric of community that I could not imagine itself without it. This reminded me that sometimes if you have the ability to, you have to create it sometimes before it gets appreciated. You might have to take some steps to initiate change so that decision makers can't ultimately eliminate it down the road. Keep going. And I also talked to Janice Barlow, a colleague down the road at Willowbank School of Restoration Arts. She's the executive director there in Queenston. And she's told me, to me, community value is a sense of importance, unique identity, or significance that residents attach to a public or private property. It's usually a place where special, emotional, or shared memories have been made. These both show to me that show a sense of place. And more importantly, how can your space create a person's sense of being part of something bigger, making it indispensable? Move on. So that's great. We find that we want to be more engaged, we utilize our spaces, work with other groups who will help us or help them fulfill a community need. What next? One of our big sayings around here is plug and play. One of our underlying principles is that we wish to take advantage of those who are our volunteers or our staff. What skills can they bring to the table and assist you? Doesn't mean for free. It doesn't mean you need to volunteer their time. However, part of the volunteer process, we find out what skills volunteers possess. How can we get someone already engaged with us to do something else that may reach new audiences, or train our volunteers, or provide an added service at events? We also ask, who is out in the community that we should know? Who is interesting? Who is engaging and can fit our needs and also open up to new eyes? What lectures can we bring in to match an exhibition? What groups can we pair with to have them rent our space for their open houses? If you have people who can extend your audience or reach and still match your mandate, why not utilize them? And even better, will they come with people? We had a local resident and very knowledgeable individual set up our film series here because she is well known in local film societies and groups, and we anticipated correctly that she would bring at least a decent showing to the first showing and help build momentum for the future. I am also a big fan of finding products and services that are ready to go. Culture Days and Doors Open are the best examples here for us. But in the past, I have also been happy to have my sites as part of garden tours or holiday house tours. I get tied into those. They have been ready-made marketing tools, and being as part of the program, they are the brand, and you don't need to explain that to visitors. They provide opportunities for a wider audience and quite often allow you to showcase things at your property in a different way. It could be behind-the-scenes tours of a theater or a lecture by a long-time volunteer. Keep those things simple, in my opinion. Those that show up for those types of garden tours or doors open are not your regular visitors, and they see your place as this is a risk-free introduction to your space. Also take advantage of these new audiences. The entrance might be free, but have a donation box out. Have a donation box out, push your memberships, push a current campaign, or have a raffle going on. Something to sort of generate new interest or generate some revenue or just get people engaged in your space. Alex? I was going to go Alex next time. So moving on to tip number 3. When exploring new ways to use your space, determine if working with a new group or undergoing a new endeavor assists with you meeting your mission, your mandate, or your goals. You need to put time and energy into this. Here's what I would like to bring in a few of my examples of partnerships I have been involved with. Several of these examples are from when I was running that small two full-time staff museum that was a not-for-profit. We had created partnerships with a group of actors and 2 different music groups. With these, there are both good and bad aspects of them, of course. And when examining them, we had to determine what value has it brought to our space and what strain was there on our staff, which was usually myself because usually I was the one that had to stick around and keep the doors open. Move on. These were 3 different partnerships. They were all different relationships. One was free space, and we partnered with them on ticket sales. We split costs and created, one was free public space, and we partnered with them on ticket sales. We split the costs and created a revenue sharing agreement. One was also free space for their volunteer thank you event in exchange for a return event for our members and at a special event. And the last was actually a below market rental. All of these had downfalls, of course, staffing being the biggest. But interestingly enough, the one that provided us the rental, that was the one we decided to break off. That was the relationship that did not meet the needs of the organization. And because they provided some rent, they felt that it was their space to do as they pleased. And the same conversations that happened with a partnership did not happen with that rental. However, we did see benefits of the other 2, even though we didn't generate revenue, that we felt were better at the end of the day. These allowed us to be introduced to new audiences. We could set some parameters to the agreement that were favorable to us. Many people who attended were taxpayers, and our organization did get a smallish operating grant from the town. So it was always helpful to have the locals use the space. Even if a taxpayer was not coming into one of our events, it didn't hurt to have them see the space. And lastly, we were able to attract some new members and attendees as a result. They became stakeholders in our organization. I must admit we could have done better in these. We could have utilized these relationships more for marketing and advertising purposes. We could have done a better job of pushing memberships, and we could have gathered more data as well. When negotiating these relationships, though, don't forget that many of you with heritage, cultural, unique spaces, people love your facilities. Do not underestimate that or undervalue that, even in small spaces. But try and get good at making the right choices when creating these relationships. Alex? So when I talked to Elke Weinstein at Heritage Canada, many of you probably know her through the Cultural Spaces Fund. I asked her, what advice would you give to a facility that's looking to utilize its space for purposes beyond core operations? And she said, I would say, make it very clear what your goals are and put it in writing. Consult with everything who will be using the space, and then clearly state what the expectations are. Be consistent about the application of those expectations and goals. And if they evolve over time, be consistent about consulting with the people using the space. Communication lines should always be open, even if the final decisions are made by the managers of the facility. As an owner or manager of a facility, utilize these agreements to evaluate and determine whether the relationship should or should not continue. Examine after the partnership is over, what could you have done better, and then implement it. Alex? So tip number 4 for me is quite simple. Don't overcommit. Don't get burdened and dragged down by what may become a tricky relationship. If you're unsure of a relationship or a match for your organization, take some baby steps with them and see if there is a match. Set up the framework that is comfortable to you. And also know when to say no. And don't be afraid to say no. Personally, I do still have trouble with this. I know I say yes way too often. And at my old museum, this impacted myself and my family mostly, since it was a small staff. But with more staff, it doesn't necessarily get easier. Staff also need to be on board with why this relationship has been set up and why is it important to the organization. And that definitely needs to be part of the communications. Okay, Alex? My last tip, again, seems obvious, but I'm amazed at how many people don't get it. You need to put the time in. You need to put the time in to seek out community partners. You need to put the time in to build up trust with them. You can join their board, but it doesn't always have to be at that level. I haven't with many of our partners, but I also know others who have joined boards, and that has led to great successes as well. But make sure you stick your head in their facilities. Show up at their events, support them, and find out what makes them tick. For years, I've been trying to connect with local Indigenous groups with little success. We would work with Six Nations Economic Development on a program and others at the Polytech, but that was a 2-hour drive away, and we didn't have much of a NAGA relationship. In 2015, we added the need to work with our local Indigenous community as part of our strategic plan, with some action places in step, but really no clue as to whether we could get there. This gave us the direction and the added emphasis on our priorities to stretch ourselves with good success. We put the word out there that we were looking to do better in this area. We caught wind of the Niagara Regional Native Center having an economic summit, And I stuck my nose in there and asked to attend. And from it being an economic summit, I had no reason to be there, being a culture museums manager. However, I was welcomed, and when I was there, I found a gap in their needs that we could help fulfill while attending it. And it became a potentially 3-year formal grant partnership. We have actually, as of Saturday, that 1 year is down, and we've got an application in for years 2 and 3 of that partnership. Similarly, our first Indigenous program partnership involved a team of our staff traveling to 6 nations and making that 2-hour drive. I had a few contacts there, and we thought we'd go up and maybe discuss a traveling exhibition was sort of the impetus for that meeting. We didn't go in that direction, but started with finding gaps in both of our organizations, and we ended up developing a joint award-winning educational program called Discovering Ganada. We saw what their needs were, and we talked about what our needs were, and we were able to marry the two. These are just some of my experiences that were successful. I have also, I readily admit that I've failed to connect with several organizations. There's several that have been on my wish list to just get a conversation, try to work with them, try to get a meeting, with no luck about even getting phone calls back. So I do know that sometimes it doesn't come as easy as you want it to, but I also know that I'm going to keep at it and try and connect with those places. And I would encourage you to do the same. So Alex, at this point, I think we have the toughest task. How do you prove that a program, project, or event was successful? Many of you had to prove it to a board, some of you to municipal council, or sometimes you may need to prove it to your own staff. It comes right back to the question of what is community value. You need to determine what methods you have at your disposal, what are easy stats to gather, and what is hard but necessary to collect. And then you need to continue to collect that data. I want to end today with a few things to consider when looking at data, metrics, and measurables. There are many ways to measure impact methods. There are tons of materials out there for our friends in social services and healthcare. And I doubt any of us have the magic bullet with regards to which numbers you collect that truly shows community value. But I would like to say that we need to continue to try and find the metrics and translate the materials for those social services that we find can help get our cultural message across. All these things I'm about to discuss can be multiple day seminars, could be easily explained by people a little bit more knowledgeable than myself, and could drive all of us crazy trying to figure out the best way to do it. But I would like to take some time to talk about SRROI, metrics, and measurements. Numbers can show value. You can prove your worth to community. However, you just need to determine what that value is. We all wish that we had that one-shot metrics that we can present regularly, that people understand what we do, but it's never been that easy. Is it visitation or attendance versus community demographics? Is it bums and seats? Is it new artifacts in the collection? Is it school program attendees? Or maybe for you it's rentals, shows, or other measurables. But of course we all have lots of other factors such as revenue generated, membership, and visibility. When looking at this section, I would like to tie it back to tip number 1. What is community value to you, and how do you measure it? Let's start with SRROI, or social return on investment. Personally, I haven't seen many cultural arts groups using this. However, I believe that there is some potential there. From what I've explored with it, it is mostly European groups using it at the moment, but I do like the principles behind it. SRROI helps you determine the cost of what would happen if your not-for-profit organization did not exist. If we do nothing, actually, and Alex, can you go back? If we do nothing, and the diagram here illustrates it quite well. These 100 people will cost the public service system $7 million. The cost to change the lives of these 100 people would be $2.7 million. Is this approach usable for camps, for after-school programming, for marginalized people you work with, for employment programs, or something else? Maybe it's storage needs or of artifacts or other. I've provided a link at the end of the presentation if you wish to dig deeper into this. If you develop something that works for you, please share, because all of us are looking for those great numbers and those great ways of telling our story. Elka also pointed out to me the fact that the Canadian Index of Wellbeing might be a measurement for your organization to consider and look measuring off of it. If nothing else, these and other metrics will help create a point of dialogue with funders at all levels. Okay, now you can move on, Alex. If not taking it to the SRROI level, you need to have something to measure. So what is that? I would recommend developing some measurements linked to your new endeavor or your partnership or your core activities. Examine your mission, your vision, your goals, your strategies and activities, and determine what you can measure that meets some of these. How can you prove that you are achieving your mission? Not really new for most of you. However, I would add that you need to ask yourself, what do you wish to get out of this activity, program, or partnership? Develop measurements that match that. Have the numbers tell your story and make it easy to determine success. I also provided a link at the end to Measuring What Matters in Not-for-Profits. Really like this article as it provides a good way to relook at what you're measuring and why. I think it might be most useful to you. And when you find those numbers that you feel tell a story and you feel confident the value of your organization is reflected, keep delivering the message that they say. You need to reiterate these messaging and these stories. Okay, moving on. Another thing to consider, it's going to get real fun in a minute too. Another thing to consider is American museums are frequently showcasing economic impact reports. This started a while back, it's nothing new, but I didn't see many small or mid-sized Canadian museums jump on this. Possibly we operate in a different environment, we have a different outlook, and we most certainly have different funding sources. But there are some good ones out there that provide tools to show what benefit you are to the community. Most of the links I provided at the end of this presentation are for museums, but there should be some transferable ideas there for you. I provided links to a few examples and a template from the American Association of Museums. The links are mostly large institutions. However, the template that the AAM provides is very transferable. And I know that many smaller institutions in the U.S. go through this exercise. I did myself in Niagara Lake for a while and did one here for Niagara Falls, but as a result of our status as part of the municipality now, I was really not able to utilize it, nor was I required to utilize it as well. But I think it could provide value to some of you. Okay, next. Lastly, don't forget about the stories that you tell. Find great, impactful stories. How has your organization benefited someone? Put a face to it. We know that the AG... Oh, no, go back. The video is not blaring, but anyways. Put a face to it. We know that the AGO has thousands of visitors on a busy day. But tell me about the lives of one or two of those people who are served. How did a program make a difference? It isn't always about the visit. It is often about the human contact or impact. Provide stories of empowerment, preservation, legacy, and other human attributes. I would love to share one story that I love from our site. This is supposed to be a video showing, so just imagine that moving. It's not that much. But what you see is the bottom of a community art project that we created by our friends at BrainKite. Several nights in the summer of 2014, we welcomed the community to come and paint sticks and be part of the artistic process. The installation opened during our Night of Art, September of 2014. There was a child visiting during a school program several weeks after it was unveiled, and he was being a little pain in the you-know-what. So much so that the teacher removed him from the program. But while sitting on the couch in the lobby of the museum, his face lit up, and he started telling the teacher or chaperone that was watching him, "I made that," and pointed at the waterfall there. The adult kept on dismissing him and sort of poo-pooing him and not really believing what he was saying. And he walked over to it and said, "Yes, I made that," and pointed to a particular paint stick in the waterfall. I don't know if the adult ever understood what he was getting at or believed him. It was a shame. We did explain the project. But our staff who witnessed it could see that he identified as being part of something and was taking pride in the work that he was part of. That work connected him to the community, connected him to our museum, and in my opinion, shows community value in what we do. In addition, it also provided our staff with a wonderful feeling that this project was worthwhile and made a difference. We quite often need that reassurance ourselves. But what I would like to emphasize here is, yes, collect metrics, but don't get caught throwing out too many numbers. You need to provide straightforward numbers that can be easily read, but the stories tied to that number will make it more memorable. We also, and you probably do as well, collect this from visitor comments, on TripAdvisor, teacher feedback forms, and more. Janice Barlow at Willowbank had another great idea, and she sort of said, "I always ask our residents about experience with the facility or their favorite story, and just keep those on hand so you can utilize them how you need it in annual reports or in other activities." Okay, keep moving now, Alex. It's going to get fun here. Now, a bit of a warning. Sometimes metrics will let you down, and you might not always get what you want. So there's a bit of a warning that numbers don't always tell your story. But it is worth looking into larger stories for you to tell. This one didn't quite work out well for us, but the reason why I'm going into is to show that where I started looking for numbers that can help tell a story. A few years back, I was hoping I could find stats at how our investment in the museum had benefited the neighborhood. So give 2 clicks there, Alex. Okay, great. And the museum opened in 2012. It was $11.4 million expansion. And the neighborhood was in need of development. It's historic and a little tired and had many social issues. So there's one block. This is literally half a block up the road. That's our pawn shop on the corner, and the sign above it advertised the strip club down the road. There's 2 other pawn shops right next to it. So go again. In addition to the museum expansion, the city had done extensive streetscaping as well in the neighborhood. So this is the other side of the block, and we have a Money Mart and a Cash Money on the other corner. So not the most affluent part of the community that we are building in. I wanted to see if police data could at least give me an idea if the investment that we had in the museum assisted in making the neighborhood safer. I was told not to bother by the Niagara Regional Police statistician. Yes, police departments have statistician, and I had no idea until I talked to our local constable. Keep moving, Alex. Okay, yeah, so police data. Okay, one more. Okay, keep going. All right. I was told not to bother because the exact same month that we opened up the museum, a popular country bar opened up the same month as us and created way more incidents on the police blotter. So any call in the department that was an incident, so the area might be better than what we had before the museum was open with regards to thefts, prostitutions, drug-related offenses. However, their numbers don't drill that far down in the police department. And from an incident perspective, that wasn't showing. Okay, keep going. The first, First Pack, again, Steve Stolze at First Pack is part of a downtown revitalization program. And they utilize economic development data like occupancies and new businesses to measure their value. So you need to find what numbers are important to you and your funders and make that connection. And I love that Steve's example is trying to prove that. I hope it pans out. I'm a resident of St. Catharines, so I really hope it pans out that it does revitalize a downtown and prove that culture exists. But it's something you have to have a lens on very early in the process. Okay, so that does it for me. I hope that gives you a few more things to think about with regards to projects and new activities, or just your general day-to-day work and reporting. I have to thank Steve, Janice, and Elka for their help in giving me a few perspectives. And I also mentioned that there's a few resources, so the next page has resources and my contact details. Again, I'm happy to talk about these. I think Alex and I, when we started this conversation, I think all of us in our community for the last decade or so have been looking for great measurements in how we express community value. Happy to talk to anybody who wants to sort of explore it a bit further or have any ideas. But I really hope that you enjoyed this, and thank you. And I guess we'll leave it at that. And if there's any questions or if there's time, I have no idea how long I've gone and ranted on about, but hopefully you found some value in that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clark. That was a great presentation, and we certainly appreciate your work in telling us about the City of Niagara Falls Museums. Really great stories there. And from all around your area and your contacts, so I think a lot of us can garner what has been working for your community and your space, and perhaps bring it back to our own. What I'd like to do now is, yes, we are over a little bit in time, but I'd like just to open up a couple minutes of questions so we can take 2 or 3. So if anyone does have a question, please type it in the chat box now. As a reminder, your mics are muted for the webinar, but we do have time for 2 or 3 questions if you would like to ask them to Clark. So I don't see anybody in the chat box at this time. Again, Clark's information is up on the slide. If you'd like to contact him for any questions that you have after the webinar, we'll be sending out his slides, we'll be sending out the recording, as well as a survey for you to complete. And I'd also would like to remind everyone of Space Finder, a great resource to animate your space and engage your community as well. We have it in, gosh, it's coming to over 10 instances across Canada, and Mississauga is our most up and coming one. So stay tuned for news on that. And we'd like to thank our funders for making the Learning Series possible, the Department of Canadian Heritage, the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and the Ontario Arts Council. So thank you very much. So this is the time of transition for everyone. What I'd like to do is thank you all for joining us. Those who are not in the Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, we kindly ask that you exit the meeting room at this time. And again, thank you so much. We will be in touch. And then for those who are in the Arts Facilities Mentoring Network, what I'd like for you to do is stay in the meeting room online, but then also pick up your phone and dial into our conference line so we can have that discussion and final wrap-up session together. Thank you, everyone. And if you have trouble accessing the conference line, feel free to type in the chat box here. I'll leave this up for a minute or so, and then I'll switch over to our slide deck for mentoring. Thank you, everyone.